Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of On the Legal Side. I'm the host, Rick McCann, founder and CEO of Private Officer International and Army College. Glad that you are listening in, joining us from wherever you might be, whether you're listening live or on demand. We appreciate all of our listeners, so many from around the world. We've mentioned this time and time again. We are just amazed over the years. The people who listen from countries I've never heard of, never been to, and probably never will be. But we're glad to have all of you, and we just wanted to make note of that and let you know that we're appreciative of the increase of listeners, and we're going to try to be as faithful to you as possible, bringing you the best in private security and public safety news and training. And I do want to remind you now, wherever you're at, whatever country, whatever village, town, city, state, wherever you might be around this globe, you are welcome to join. You are welcome to be a member. We are an international association with members in about 47 countries now. We're almost at that 50 mark, 50. Looking forward to it. No matter where you are, go to our website, privateofficer.org. You can join today. We have special pricing and promotions for international members, so be sure that you go to the website and join right now. Whoa. Not right now, but I mean right after the show. Right after the radio show is over. We want you to become a member. If you do become a member right after this show, we will throw in a free Private Officer International patch and lapel pin if you become a lifetime member right after the show. And you can hold us to it. All right, you are listening to this edition of From the Legal Side, On the Legal Side, all about the legal issues of the private security and law enforcement and public safety industries. I do also want to recognize and make a note before we really get into today's episode. In the last 6 days, we've had 8 security officers killed, 5 in the line of duty, 3 off duty. And we want to send out condolences and prayers to their families. Just horrific week for security officer deaths. We also had a loss prevention agent at a Macy's that was stabbed multiple times by 2 women that he caught shoplifting, and he's in very, very critical condition. And I'm really hoping that he makes it. I hope that you'll pray for him and all those others who are injured daily across the country, both private officers and public law enforcement officers. In fact, the state of Illinois, in less than 3 days, lost 2 of their state troopers killed in terrible traffic accidents. One female state trooper was literally run over by an 18-wheeler during a traffic stop, and another was killed in an accident as well. So just keep them all in your prayers and send condolences along their way. Today, on the legal side, we're talking about traffic stops and parking enforcement. Traffic stops and parking enforcement for private security non-sworn officers. And what a better, really, there is no better. What a unique spot for me to be broadcasting this to you today live. I'm actually mobile in my vehicle. I'm sitting in at least a 10-mile backup right now on Interstate 77 between North Carolina and Virginia. I'm almost into Virginia, but I'm still in North Carolina, and there's been several very long backups, one because of a 18-wheeler that went over and down a hill and spilt a lot of fuel. They're having to be very particular with that and clean it up before they remove the 18-wheeler. And then this other one is also looks to be either a car accident or construction, although I don't know of any construction in this particular area. There's a ton of construction along Interstate 77 in and around Charlotte, as they are putting in toll lanes, but not in this particular area, so I'm sure it's another car wreck, although from the looks of things, that won't be anytime soon that I'll be able to verify that. So today we're talking about traffic enforcement and parking enforcement by private security, public safety, non-sworn officers. You ask yourself, well, what do you mean traffic enforcement and parking enforcement by private security? I've never heard of such a thing. They don't have no such authority. I mean, what do they think they are? Cops? They just want to be cops? I mean, no way. We know that they don't have they're not supposed to be doing that. You might be thinking that. You might even be telling yourself that, and maybe you're telling someone else that. Maybe you're telling us. But the true and honest facts are private security, public safety, conduct traffic enforcement and parking enforcement on private property every day across the country and in many countries, and have been for many years, almost as long as I've been in the business. I've seen, heard, and done parking enforcement and traffic enforcement. Now the key is, and I've given seminars to college public safety, mall security, and private security companies. And in fact, we talked about this a couple of years ago, maybe 2 or 3 now. But when you're doing traffic enforcement or parking enforcement, you have to be very, very careful of what kind of property you're on, where you are at the time that you begin to conduct that traffic enforcement or parking enforcement, and you have to be very careful to the laws of your state. So let's look at this. Let's start with the easy one. There are 3 methods of parking enforcement on private property. Some of you work at hospitals. Some of you are on school campuses, including colleges and universities. You're listening today, and you've worked in the Department of Public Safety and or Security, and you conduct parking enforcement by giving out warnings. You have warning tickets or stickers printed, and when you have somebody in a no parking zone, a handicap space, a fire lane, in front of the dumpster, or they're parked in a lot at the campus where it's only for faculty, but some other joker, of course, couldn't find a space. He was in a hurry to get to class, so he parked his car, knowing it's only for the staff, but he's parked there anyways, and now you're going to issue a parking warning. Parking warnings are not citations. They're not parking tickets. They have no value monetarily. They are warnings that you are issuing as a courtesy. You're letting them know that they're in the wrong space. And usually it says something like, if you do it again, you'll be towed. That is one form of parking enforcement. Another type of parking enforcement, a little bit more stricter, and yes, it can be done on private property such as hospital campuses, HOAs, homeowner association controlled property, as well as other private property, military bases, even at condos and other private properties that have a completely controlled, access controlled property. Once you come through the gate, once you come through that driveway, once you come through the entrance or the rear of the property, you are on private property and they control parking and traffic. So another form of parking enforcement is actually issuing not a warning, but a parking ticket that has some penalty attached to it. Is this legal? Is this really above board? Yes. As long as the property owner, manager, or agent has given you written notice, either in letter form that has been sent to you as a tenant, or they have signage on the property. That is your notice. It says no parking, all violators ticketed, $25 fine. You're on record. You're on notice. If you park there, you can't be surprised. You can't be disturbed about it. You can't be upset about it because the warning was right in front of you and you failed to heed that warning. HOAs, they control the parking and the traffic. And they definitely will fine you many properties. Some properties even have their own private police force, especially in Virginia, South Carolina, Maryland, and other states. So now this is not just a warning, but this is a ticket, parking ticket with a fine attached to it. That fine is not paid to the government. It's not paid to your local city or county police department or treasurer of that location, of that municipality or county. No, that fine is actually paid to the HOA or condominium association or other entity, and they collect the fine. You mail in your check just like you would if you had a parking ticket from the city of Boston or the city of New Jersey City or Nashville, Tennessee. If you got a parking ticket, you would mail in a check. You may even do it online. Well, the same thing here. You can do it online or you can mail in a check. What happens if I don't do that? They're not the police. They're not going to come and arrest me, are they? They're not going to be able to get a warrant, an arrest warrant for me. I just won't pay it. Heck, I know nothing's going to happen. Yeah, go right ahead. Try your luck with that one. See what happens. In an HOA situation or condominium association situation, oftentimes what they will do, if you have violations, whether it's parking ticket or you didn't mow the lawn short enough or you had garbage on the curb for too long and they fine you via certified letter, then what they'll do is eventually they will put that against your property and they'll put a secondary lien on your property. So when you do go to sell your property, one of the processes in selling property or buying property is that there's going to be a title search on that property, whether it's real property like land or a house. It could be your vehicle or boat. But when you sell property, a title search is conducted to make sure that the title is clear, that there is no liens, and that the owner of the property can transfer it to the buyer without any delay. So in this situation, if you have ABC Property Management and they put a lien on your property for violations, whether it's disturbance, not mowing your grass, like I said, or whatever, then your title is not clean and you can't pass title because there's liens on it. And what you have to do is you actually have to pay those liens, whether there's 1 or 10. You have to pay all of those liens off before you can have a clear title and can legally sell your property. And that's a real bummer if you don't know those liens are there and try to sell your property and they do a title search and they go, no, buddy, hey, yo, you know you got a lien over here? And you're like, oh, no, I don't, no. Yeah, you do. And you have to clear those liens before you can pass title and sell your property. So when you're dealing with a written ticket that has a fine assessed from a public entity, you pay them. When you're dealing with the same scenario from a private property, an HOA, condo association, I've seen them from parks, where you have a private amusement park and they issue parking tickets and you pay the ranger. And there's other businesses that also do the same thing. Whether or not they follow through with collection, that's a different story. I know that many cities will send you to the collection agency, to a private collection agency, and they'll put it on your credit record, on your TransUnion, on your Equifax, on your Experian, all the major credit bureaus, and you'll be stuck with that for 3 years unless you pay it off, and even then it stays on your credit report. So be careful of what you do and don't pay and what you believe in. I would, no matter who issues it, I would either pay it or I would be in touch with them right away to figure out what method of dispute that they have, because if they issue parking tickets or any type of tickets, private entity or public, they have to have due process. They have to have a method where those being issued the tickets have a right to appeal it. And so I would check into that right away. When we come back from this quick break, we're going to be talking about traffic enforcement. Now, this is an area that is really getting a lot of notice. And we're also going to finish up with one other method of parking enforcement as well. There's really two, and they're both not too nice. Very unpleasant situation. I've been involved, not with my own car, but I've been involved in the enforcement, and I can tell you there's a lot of unhappy people. We'll be right back after this message. Don't go away.
From coast to coast, cops are cracking down on seatbelt violations. Buckle up day and night or expect a ticket. It doesn't matter who you are or where you live, they'll be on the lookout. Cops write tickets to save lives. Click it for ticket.
My name's Melissa Kinsey, and I'm with the YMCA of Lincoln. Drowning can happen in an instant. Your kids need to be safe not only in the swimming pool, but at the lake, and even in the bathtub. So what you can do to keep your kids safe is to supervise them. Put down the phone, put down the book, and sit and watch. Sit and play. Put your swimming suit on, and make sure that your kids are always in view, and they will have a great summer.
All right, welcome back to this edition of On the Legal Side, and we're talking about parking enforcement and traffic enforcement for private security, public safety, non-sworn officers. Now, a moment ago, I told you that I'm actually broadcasting live this time around from my vehicle on Interstate 77 North in North Carolina, just, I think about 20 miles south of Virginia state line. So we're heading north. I'll be in Virginia at this pace probably by tomorrow afternoon sometime. Heavy traffic. We've had a serious rollover 18-wheeler crash. That really had traffic backed up for about 10 miles. Then there was a secondary, and I wasn't really sure that was a crash, but it turned out to be road construction, and they had the roadway marked very poorly. It didn't give enough time for drivers to maneuver to the other lane, and so that was the tie-up there. But we were talking before the break about parking enforcement. We talked about verbal. We talked about a written warning. We talked about being at an HOA or another entity that issues a summons, a parking ticket that does have a fine associated with it. You can also obviously be fined by the city, town, or village, county of your community, and you would have to pay those tickets, usually online or through the mail. But there are two other methods of parking enforcement that is greatly used, especially on private property when we're dealing with campuses and businesses, security, hospitals, things like that. And that is the use of wreckers, tow trucks. If you're parking where you're not supposed to be, whether that be in a handicapped spot or somebody else's spot there in the condominium or hospital, wherever, you can be towed. Yep, it's legal. You can be towed by a contracted towing service, but there needs to be some clear signs, and every community, every state, every area, especially in a major city area, they're going to have their own ordinances and laws that dictate what you have to do, what kind of signs you've got to have, how tall do they have to be, what color are they, what does the sign have to say. And most of the time, the signs have to tell you that there's no parking here, or it's parking for staff members only, or it's parking for visitors, or it's parking for condo 12. It also has to give you, in many areas, a phone number of where your vehicle is at, the name of the towing service, and their phone number so that the vehicle can be retrieved. Now, in many areas, the ordinances and even state statutes clearly dictate that you have to have X number of signs per parking space. So if you have a small lot, 12 spaces, you might have to have 2 signs saying no parking or restricted parking with all the information required by law. If you have a bigger parking lot, 30, 50, 100, 200 spaces, then you have to have a whole lot more signs up. And the law will tell you every 15th, every 10 spaces, or whatever it might be, you have to have another sign. So it's very specific. Another form of parking enforcement, one that I actually used, and I don't want to say cornered the market, but I did corner the market in multiple states. And this was back in the early 80s. And that was the use of parking boots, the Denver boot as it was called back then. With notice, the management company, again, would notify the tenants in writing that if they parked in a handicap or fire lane or wherever that they weren't supposed to, they would be booted. And they would have to pay, at that time, $75 or $100, depending on the property, to have the boot released. And there was a phone number, 24/7. We had patrol officers, part of my security company, that would go down and unlock the boot, collect the fee, of course, and release them. And this is grown across the country. It's used at hospitals and colleges. Even police departments now will slap a boot on you if you have outstanding tickets or fines. And in places like Philadelphia and Boston and other cities, they use a license plate reader. And so they have spotters, parking enforcement that drive around all day long up and down the streets looking for vehicles that are preloaded into the license plate reader, and they impound the vehicle. They put the boot on them, and they only let it stay there for a short amount of time. And if you don't come and get it, or you don't pay for it, then they call the wrecker, and you get towed into impound. On a private property, again, you could have the boot, and as long as you have been notified. And that's really the key. That's really the key. You have to be given written notice. There's got to be signs posted as to, the parking restrictions and the penalty, phone number, so forth. But as long as all of that is in place, then parking enforcement via the boot or towing is legal. And once again, if you don't pay to get your boot out, eventually, they'll start charging you at the towing lot a impound per day fee, and if you don't pay it still, then they will auction it off. So there are essentially 5 different methods of parking enforcement that can be applied by non-sworn officers. All right, what about traffic enforcement? We've talked about this a few times over the years, and like I said a moment ago, it's growing. It's one of those things where, because there's so many vehicles out there and many apartments, condos, hospitals, colleges, and other private businesses really have expansive campuses and property that's all private road, somebody has to enforce those traffic laws, and so it comes down to private enforcement. Now, in most states, police can still enforce certain laws on private property, certain traffic enforcement, usually DUI, as long as they have seen it, reckless driving or driving to endanger. If they see you obviously coming into the property driving and they do a traffic stop, they can charge you if you're driving under with a revoked license or suspension or other limits. And law enforcement can also write you for other driving offenses in certain states on private roads and property. So again, you just have to be aware of what your state statutes are. In the traffic enforcement department, again, as long as we are enforcing the law under notice, so if it's in a condominium or a private park or hospital, we've got to give notice to either the tenants or those using the property, and it can be done by letter, it can be done by signage, it can be done at the entrance to the property, speed limit 15, controlled by radar, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's your warning. And again, just like with the parking enforcement, it can be verbal, it can be a written warning, and in cases of HOAs and hospitals, campuses, and other entities, it could be a written speeding ticket with a fine attached payable to the school or the hospital or the other entity, the HOA, and enforceable by a number of different methods. So if you don't pay it and you're a college student, they don't release your transcript, they don't release your diploma, and at the end of your 2 or 4 year school, you got to pay up. You got to pay the piper. It might not be today, it might not even be next year, but eventually, when you go to graduate, yep, those are one of those fees that are hanging around waiting for you to pay. And if you don't pay, so sorry, no diploma, my friend. Wait until you have money, pay, and then we give you the diploma. And that's how it works. So sooner or later, you will have to pay. If it's a outstanding parking, speeding, or other fine ticket at a HOA, I told you, they can put a lien against you, and they will put a lien against you if it's substantial enough. And I've even heard of one HOA who put a lien on somebody for $11. So it's really up to that property. Now, last year, or maybe about 2 years ago, in Atlanta, Georgia, a local TV station did an investigative report on this very topic. They went out and videotaped security pulling cars over, doing traffic stops. In one complex, they were even using radar, and they asked law enforcement, is this legal? And they asked the county law office, is this legal? And they all came back, yes, as long as it's private property, it's posted, and especially if it's an HOA where they have covenants and they've agreed to it, they've agreed to be bound by this, then it's legal. You can't just decide to go out and start enforcing traffic, on the side of the road. You can't just decide to pull somebody over at the shopping mall because they're going too slow, especially if you're not an employee in the security department. But if your private business wants to set up traffic enforcement, in most states that I'm aware of, it is legal. There may be some restrictions or some process that you may have to go to register that with the local police so that they know that somebody's out there and that it's not some fake police officer, impersonator. I mean, that would be a good thing to do anyways, even if it's not required. That way they know if they get a call, it's their security staff, their public safety that are conducting traffic enforcement. Now, years ago, I had a contract, several contracts actually, managed by the same company. We ran radar all the time. All of my patrol units were equipped. Coming in off the main road on one property, we had a long entrance road up the hill and into the complex, and they would hit that road coming off the county road, and they would hit that private property road at 40 miles an hour, sometimes even faster. We got numerous DUI arrests out of that. We got a couple of stolen cars out of that, drugs almost every week, so it was a good thing. If you are going to conduct traffic stops, you want to do it as safely as possible. Now, if you are a single-man unit, a single-man property, I don't recommend it unless you have two-way radio communication with a dispatch or somebody who permanently is there to answer your call, because if something goes sideways and you need 911 and you're all alone and you're just out there doing speed control or traffic enforcement on your own, it's very dangerous. Traffic stops and domestics are the two most dangerous type of person contact that law enforcement get involved in, and it's been that way for many years, and it still is that way. So if you are going to do any type of traffic enforcement on private property, you need to know 5 things. Number 1, you need to know the law. What does the law require? What does the law allow? What is your limitations within the law? You're not going to be able to be in pursuit. You're not going to be able to chase them out to the main drag, to the public road. You're not going to be able to do pit maneuvers. You're not going to be able to run them around the property 19 times and have your lights and siren. No. It has to be reasonable, because anything you do to conduct a traffic stop or to stop traffic, if they were to be involved in a car accident, if they were involved in some injury or fatality, my goodness, the liability that you and your company is going to automatically assume and maybe even some criminal charges might come your way. So you have to be very, very direct and sure about what the law is in your state, your county, your city ordinance. You need to have the right equipment. If you're going to conduct speed control, you need a calibrated, real radar unit, not something you buy from Radio Shack or offline for $49. That might work to some degree, but it's just not going to be calibrated, or the equipment is just not to the professional degree that it needs to be, and it could be easily challenged in court. The other thing that you need to have, obviously, you want to have safety gear, you want to have training in traffic stops, in running radar, you want to be able to understand the approach, you want to be able to understand assessment, to be able to defend yourself should something go the wrong way, and you also want to have backup. And using a cell phone for 911 might be all right in a standard assignment where you need police because of somebody intoxicated, or you need an ambulance because somebody fell out. But in a traffic stop, where things are fluid, they move quickly, and you need backup now, a phone just isn't going to do it. You're just not going to have enough time. You're not going to have enough time to get to the phone and dial 911 when something happens. Come up with some type of radio dispatch between you and another security officer, or I just wouldn't do it. You have to be safe above all else. You need to make sure that you have a process, due process. How do they appeal it? What do they do if they don't agree with that speeding ticket? What do they do if they tell you go kiss their butt and they speed off? And will you be detaining anybody who you find to be under the influence or in possession of illegal gun or drugs? We don't want you to be playing cops and robbers out there. I mean, I've done it as a law enforcement officer on private property. I've done it as a private security person on private property. It can be done. Colleges and universities who don't have sworn law enforcement, they also do traffic enforcement. One of my first jobs was at a college, a university really, and their public safety department did traffic stops, flashing lights, siren. We wrote tickets that was payable to the university. So it's done, and it's still done across the country every day, more and more. But you have to have training, you have to have the right equipment, you have to have backup, you have to have communication, you have to have a way out if something goes wrong. That is going to do it for this edition of On the Legal Side. We hope that if you are doing parking enforcement, that you are doing it safely. If you are doing traffic control, that you are doing it safely. Things can go bad so quickly. One moment everything is good, they're cooperative, ha ha ha, everything is good, yeah, but yada yada yada. And the next second, they're all over you, and it's history. It could be life and death. You're in a battle for your life. Remember, officer safety is always number one. Until the next time that we meet again here on the radio, be blessed, be safe, and we'll see you right back here on the radio.